if you thought the gap between the first and second movie was a long time, I mean, this one takes the cake. Easily. I've never seen a franchise that has gone this long without a third entry. I don't think, at the very least, that I've ever seen.
Bad boy.
Hey,
what she gonna do? What she gonna do when we come in?
No, never. Y'all will never do that again.
Yeah, and you fucking up the lyrics, which take a long time to learn.
Bad Boys for Life is this time directed by Adil and Bilall, not Michael Bay. These are Belgian director duos, with a screenplay by Chris Bremner, Peter Craig, and Joe Carnahan, and a story by Peter Craig and Joe Carnahan. Film stars Will Smith, Martin Lawrence, Vanessa Hudgens, Alexander Ludwig, Paola Núñez, Charles Melton, Kate Del Castillo, Nicky Jam, and Joe Pantoliano. According to IMDb's plot synopsis, Miami detectives Mike Lowry and Marcus Burnett must face off against a mother and son pair of drug lords who wreak vengeful havoc on their city. Like I said at the beginning, the first and second movie, with when those films were released, like the gap between those two is long, but I mean, this gap between the second and third movie was pretty much a meme. It had been in the works for such a long time, and both Will Smith and Martin Lawrence had kind of gone back and forth on if they were ever going to do a third movie. I don't know if they had been waiting on Michael Bay, but he was, busy with Transformers at that point. So honestly, I don't know what were you expecting with regards to a film in this franchise if your director is still doing other things. This just was something that nobody thought would happen until now. And what I mean by now, I mean 2020. Yeah, I mean, this was pre-COVID, but still. I managed to see this film before the pandemic ever happened, which I was kind of glad to have done, because then I was in for a shit show with regards to not being able to go to the theater a lot. So the fact that I was able to do that before everything got shut down, I was happy about. And this was the first Bad Boys film that I had seen in the theaters, so I had no prior knowledge to the other films. I knew about them, but I had no prior experience seeing them at all. One that was a film that I wasn't even born in that year, and the other I was still pretty young. After watching the film, I thought it was the best film, and this was when I had seen it in the theater. I thought this was the best in the series, and having rewatched it, I still think it is. I still think that this is, I think, the best of the films to have come out in the franchise. I still have my minor problems with it, but first, here are some of the positives that I had. Performances are enjoyable. Again, Will Smith, Martin Lawrence, they still have the chemistry and hilarious banter with each other, and they are easily the heart and soul of this franchise. Without a doubt, without these guys, I still don't know where this series would go, and the fact that they are committed to this series, the fact that they came back for it because they know how much that there are fans out there who love these movies. You could really tell that they really are doing it for them, and without their contribution, you wouldn't have seen another film in this series. Joe Pantoliano is still entertaining as Captain Howard. He still has the same charm and stern nature of what made Howard such a likable character for me. I've always had a fondness for a character like that. Though not in the film that much, which is kind of a little bit of a disappointment, it's still good to see Pantoliano again. And it had just been a while since I have ever seen him in a movie, so it was just nice to get to see him come back. And again, I think Pantoliano still works really well with both Smith and Lawrence. They still haven't lost their touch. They are still there. They are still having that good back and forth banter between cops and Captain. I still always like seeing that. The direction is solid. Directing duo Adil and Bilall took the better aspects of this series, but makes it more focused and less chaotic than how it was under Bay, because that was my biggest problem with the films, were the direction under Bay, because I always felt like he just had a very chaotic and frantic type of style compared to these guys, because this is a huge step up from the previous films. Without a doubt, I feel like the direction here is much more cohesive and clear on what it's trying to be instead of just feeling like it is just going crazy with its direction. So in that regard, I'm very happy with that. The action is fun. Every action sequence has a sense of style and choreography that makes it fun to watch. Definitely a blast. Somewhat, I think, the best action sequence compared to the other previous films. You could definitely tell that they put a lot of care into making sure that those action sequences were as fun and as thrilling for audiences to watch and to enjoy, and it was just a very tense and very fun film to see, especially when I saw it on the big screen. It was a lot of fun. Cinematography is stunning. Cinematographer Robek Havert shoots a stylistic and steady film that captures the beauty of Miami and the chaos of the action. Cinematography continues to still shine in these movies, and one in which I always find myself thinking that, man, they don't really feel the same in any way. They all feel different in their own unique ways, and so for them to still kind of keep that same style but add, I think, a little bit more of a stylistic approach with this one compared to the other movies, I thought that was a good shakeup for it. Production is incredible. Seeing the amount of hard work being put into the sets and action scenes looked incredible. It really feels high quality for $90 million. Yeah, this is $90 million, and I couldn't tell you that this looked like $90 million. I would have said that this was like maybe, I don't know, 150 to maybe 200, but it looks incredible. It looks well done with regards to sets and locations, and whenever they had an action sequence, you could tell a lot of choreography went into making sure that those moments happen, and they happen well enough for the audience to enjoy. The music is stellar. Composer Lauren Balfe really embraces the vibes of what the series is known for and adds a modern feel to it, which I do appreciate in these movies, is that they always still ride the feeling of what this series is like, style and tone with regards to its music, and how it implements it works well. Also, the licensed music still fits well into the series as a whole. I'm kind of glad that they knew where to put the music into the film, that it works naturally instead of feeling forceful. And I do think that the villains are the best in the series. They have a connection to Mike and his past that makes it understandable why they're doing what they're doing, because most of the villains in the other movies have been just cookie cutter and just very generic. And so for this film, I'm kind of glad we have villains that have a more of a connection to the bad boys themselves rather than just not having one. They may not be the most original, but they are definitely better than the villains in the other two. I can at least remember these villains, or at the very least I can understand their justifiable reasons. May not agree with them, but at the very least I understand why they're doing what they're doing. It's a huge improvement, but I still had some issues with the film that I saw, so here are now some of the negatives. The involvement of Marcus is lacking in this movie. I feel like Marcus is kind of pushed to the back. Like, he's just not as engaged as much as the previous two movies, because in this movie it does deal with the fact that, they're getting older. And so with that, Marcus wants to settle down and, have spend time with his family. And I can understand that. But I just feel like his involvement in the story just didn't feel like it was there. It kind of felt like he was just kind of going along with it. In a way, it just feels like a tag along. So he just doesn't do much until like near the end, when there's a big action sequence going down, big shootout. And I just thought that was a big disappointment, because if you have these two characters together, you would want to have them throughout it for a good majority. And while there are moments where they are in it a good amount, there are moments too where they are separated, which is a big letdown. The visuals are distracting. Any visual effects are pretty terrible whenever they're on screen, especially near the end where it's everywhere. The visual effects is so much and so everywhere on the screen that it becomes very distracting to watch, and it can get very bogged down with the visual effects in that regard. The humor doesn't always land. When the humor works, it's because of Smith and Lawerence, who excel it with it. But there's times in the film where the humor can be kind of cringy and not as always as funny as it can be. And it just doesn't always flow as well as it can be. I'm not saying that the humor is terrible. I'm not saying like there aren't any good jokes, but I do find that even with jokes that may not be always great, it's because of Smith and Lawerence that they know how to excel that joke, or at least like make that joke as entertaining as it can be. Because yeah, it is kind of disappointing to see that at times the jokes can still feel like they are kind of cringy or not as funny as the writers thought it would be. Out of the films, I still think that this is the best film in the series thus far. I found myself really enjoying the film throughout, and it may have some problems, but overall, a fun time. It is a really big, huge blast to watch this, and to be entertained, and I had a great time while watching it. So I'm gonna give Bad Boys for Life a 7 out of 10. I really had a good time. Still think that if I had to say which one is the best in the series, it's this one. I really did find myself enjoying it when I first watched it back in 2020, and now we're watching it in 2024. So now I will give my review for the final film thus far, Bad Boys: Ride or Die. So yes, look forward to those reviews and other movie TV show reviews coming soon.